Good afternoon. Committee will come to order. I was looking at my opening statement with the intention of shortening it, but I was discovering that the length of time it was taking me to shorten the statement was utilizing up the time that I would have saved. But I'm delighted that you're here. This is a bit of a different hearing than this committee has conducted in recent past, and I'm very interested in what each of our witnesses have to say and what conversations it may generate. The organizations that support veterans are broad, often led by other veterans and their families. We often hear from the Department of Veterans Affairs and the programs and opportunities they provide to serve our nation's veterans. And today the focus is on the non-veteran administration side of how we care for those who care for those that served our nation. Each veteran is a significant asset for our country, hugely important to their families and to their community in which they live, and ultimately to the nation. They demonstrated that in their service. And every veteran is unique and different, and their needs are different one from another. And so what has arisen over a period of time in our country is often other veterans, but certainly other citizens who rise to the occasion to try to make sure that veterans' needs are being met. And I want to thank those who do that every day, the individuals in Kansas and organizations in Kansas, but across the country, who see that needs of those who served are cared for. Today's hearing recognizes that veterans are civic assets and that their success after service is in our national interest. Much of the support available to veterans comes from non-governmental community resources, and today we're discussing how those resources support veteran success and can better integrate with veteran programs such as what the Department of Veterans Affairs provides. I'll introduce the witnesses after I now turn to the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you to all of our witnesses, an unusually large panel, but we appreciate every one of you. I want to thank particularly Holly Hermes, who is Yale University's liaison for military families and veterans. This office has enabled two of my sons who have attended Yale Law School to go there with more aid and service and companionship than they would have otherwise. One Marine Corps veteran who served in Afghanistan, the other a Navy SEAL veteran who actually is there right now. I hope he's in class. I am really honored to serve as ranking member on this committee along with very distinguished colleagues, and let me come right to the point. We're here because we need to assure veterans that they have the information and services they need when they go from military service to civilian life, often continuing to serve our country. And I know about this transition because of my two sons and countless others whom I have watched and seen and sought to mentor as they go through this sometimes very, very difficult transition period when they need help from a VSO in filing a disability claim, or how best to use their earned education benefits, connect with local employers, or access assistance when they need it most. And unfortunately, this administration has increased the difficulty of our veterans, not only in transitioning, but in living through civilian life after they leave the military. All Americans are struggling with the increased costs of rent, food, electricity, and yes, health care, most especially health care insurance, which is why we as Democrats are standing firm that there has to be an extension of health care insurance tax credits or subsidies past the end of the year. And the administration, rather than curbing costs for the average American worker, including veterans, is prioritizing historic cuts, and I mean unprecedented cuts, in SNAP, Medicaid, and health care coverage. Americans often don't appreciate that veterans use these programs and depend on them. More than 1.2 million veteran households use SNAP. Yet this administration refuses to fully fund the program despite orders from courts that they do so. There's no equivalent service like SNAP through the VA or any other federal program to serve as a safety net, meaning these cuts have devastating impacts on veterans and their families. And at the same time, reductions in access to private health insurance, Medicaid, and funding for community health services. We all know about the clinics that exist in communities with federal support. They will result in veterans relying more on the VA for their health care and benefits. Here's a startling number. Up to 1.75 million veterans and active duty service members households rely on Medicaid. Let me just give you that again. 1.75 million veterans and their households rely on Medicaid. And that's nearly 1 in 10 veterans under the age of 65. 40% of them rely on Medicaid as their sole coverage, often due to ineligibility for Medicare or VA health care. Of the 10.3 million individuals who are likely to lose Medicaid coverage because of the great big beautiful bill, which I call the great big blatant betrayal, 267,000 are veterans. And meanwhile, many veterans who escape the impacts of Medicaid cuts will instead lose their health care access when ACA premium tax credits expire, making their health care coverage unaffordable. Our veterans are suffering just as Americans are from looking at the exchanges and the premium on open enrollment as we speak right now at their kitchen tables, trying to figure out how they're going to afford health insurance, and they can't do it because premiums are doubling and tripling. Where are these veterans going to go? If eligible, they'll go to the VA, and we'll see a dramatically increased reliance on VA healthcare, stretching the capacities of our docs, our nurses, our VA facilities generally, which are already suffering from cuts and furloughs unnecessarily imposed by this administration. Their increased reliance will come on the heels of catastrophic and unnecessary cuts to VA's workforce and resources by Secretary Collins, cuts that have already eroded the department's ability to support the needs of veterans, and according to the department's actuarial firm, for every 1% of increased reliance on VA healthcare, VA can expect its costs to increase by $2.6 billion. 1%, $2.6 billion. They don't have the money. Those costs have not been accounted for in the department's funding requests or factored into Secretary Collins' plans for further cuts in VA resources. If veterans are not eligible for VA care, there's a real fear that they will simply lose access to health care completely. Are veterans losing access to health care? Seems unacceptable to me, but it's going to happen. Given the health care and cost of living crises in this country, the services provided by the groups here today are more critical than ever before. So I want to just thank you, every one of you, and your organizations for what you do. I look forward to hearing your insights and recommendations on how we can make sure that veterans get what they need, what they deserve, what we have promised them. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I now want to introduce to the committee those who are testifying today. The first witness panel is Colonel Jason Galui, the Director of Veteran and Military Families at the George W. Bush Institute, Mr. Mike Hutchings, Chief Executive Officer, Combined Arms, Colonel Barbara Carson, Managing Director of Programs and Services at Diallo Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, Mr. Jared Lyon, the National President and Chief Executive Officer of Student Veterans of America, Ms. Elizabeth O'Brien, Senior Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundations for Hiring Our Heroes, and Ms. Holly Hermes, Yale University Liaison for Veterans and Military Affairs. Again, thank you all for being here. And Colonel, I now recognize you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the George W. Bush Institute. I'm Jason Galui, the Director of the Bush Institute's Veterans and Military Families team. At the Bush Institute, we believe that the nation has a duty to empower veterans and their families to thrive beyond the uniform so that we can, in the words of President George W. Bush, unleash the potential of a generation of resourceful, determined, and experienced leaders. Veterans can be strong civic assets who inspire others to achieve common goals for a shared purpose. Veterans tend to have good character, competence, and commitment, and thus can earn the trust of and lead their fellow Americans. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, as he approached his own retirement from the U.S. Army, wrote that he faced a monumental career choice with absolutely no experience in making career choices. If soon-to-be President Eisenhower was concerned about his transition, then we must expect that many transitioning service members will be anxious about theirs. Veterans and their families, like everyone else in society, thrive when they are mentally and physically healthy, are well-informed and prepared for navigating civilian life, and can make meaningful contributions to their new communities. Therefore, at the Bush Institute, we focus on veteran health and well-being, education, and employment. Thanks to dedicated public and private efforts, there are tremendous resources available for veterans and their families. However, bureaucratic fragmentation and complex navigation can cloud the learning about and accessing these resources. Fortunately, the unique entrepreneurial spirit of the American people complements federal efforts to reintegrate veterans and their families back into American civilian society. The Veteran Wellness Alliance is one example of how public and private partners can achieve the best outcomes for veterans and their families. Led by the Bush Institute, the VWA is a collaborative network of mental and brain health care clinical providers, including the VA, and veteran peer networks that together tackle the effects of the invisible wounds of war. In 2021, the VWA launched Check-In, an innovative solution that connects veterans, service members, and their families, caregivers, and survivors to high-quality mental and brain health care, regardless of service error and regardless of characterization of service discharge. Check-In's novelty was its creation of a trusted online easy button that peer networks could provide to their members. Leveraging the power of innovation and technology, Check-In solved the navigational bureaucratic challenges associated with searching for and connecting with the right type of care. Given the many resources available, it can be paralyzing to learn which resource is most appropriate to address the challenge at hand. Check-In eliminates or at least reduces the possibility of such paralysis with respect to mental and brain health care. The VWA is a strong model for how public and private actors can partner to achieve sustained success after service for veterans and their families. Serving beyond the uniform, forming genuine connections, and making meaningful contributions are necessary components for sustained success. Discovering such opportunities is less clear in civilian life than it is while in service, which can make the military to civilian transition challenging. The sooner a veteran can rediscover their purpose, their connections, and their contributions, the more likely they and their family will thrive in civilian life. It is not unreasonable to ask a transitioning service member, what do you want to do when you get out of the military? But that's an incomplete question. What a veteran wants to do might not match what the civilian world needs from that veteran. A more complete question a veteran could ask themselves is, what do I have that the market needs? That is, what does the veteran have in their talent set, their skills, knowledge, attributes, experiences, and education that the labor market wants? Embedded in that framing is the fundamental labor supply, labor demand match. The sustained success post-transition of our veterans and military families directly affects military readiness. When a service member's final experience in uniform, their transition from it, is positive and enduring, then a new veteran and their family will be great ambassadors for military service and will be more likely to encourage others to serve. General George Washington was clear when he said, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation." Maximizing sustained success for veterans and their families post-military transition is, simply put, an enduring, vital U.S. national interest. Thank you again for this opportunity to talk with you today about this all-important national subject. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hutchings.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm Mike Hutchings, and I serve as the Chief Executive Officer of Combined Arms, a veteran-founded and veteran-led nonprofit dedicated to transforming how America supports those who have served. Each year, about 200,000 service members transition from military to civilian life. Behind that number are families. There's parents, spouses, children, who often find themselves navigating a maze of agencies and organizations that were never efficiently designed to work together. Veterans may face longer wait times, repetitive paperwork, and a lack of coordination that too often may leave them vulnerable. 10 years ago, almost to this day, Combined Arms was created to change that. We have built a technology platform that acts as a GPS for veteran services, connecting veterans, service members, and their families to the right local resources in hours instead of months. We do not replace government systems. We complement them by integrating federal, state, and community partners to close what we call the delivery divide. Today, our network includes more than 300 vetted partner organizations operating in all 50 states. Together, we have connected over 100,000 veterans and families to critical support and coordinated more than 175,000 referrals for things such as housing, employment, mental health care, and financial assistance. These connections have generated over an estimated $603 million in taxpayer savings and economic impact, while reducing the average wait time for help to just 26 hours across the nation. Our work has been recognized by the Milken Institute and the American Enterprise Institute as a national program of record for veteran transition and reintegration, a bipartisan acknowledgement that coordinated data-driven solutions can and should be scaled nationwide. But we also recognize the challenge, an oversaturated and hyper-fragmented landscape with nearly 45,000 nonprofits in the veteran services space. Thousands of organizations want to help, but duplication slows progress. Combined Arms cuts through the noise. Veterans complete one intake, they tell their story once, and they receive access to multiple services quickly. Our partners are held accountable for timely responses and outcome reporting, ensuring closed-loop results instead of open-ended referrals. Across Texas and beyond, Combined Arms has become a vital conduit connecting veterans and their families to life-changing regional, state, and federal resources, a proven model with more than 100,000 success stories. So let me share a few. A U.S. Army sergeant who was referred to Next Stop and found civilian employment in just 15 days. A mother of three, new to Houston, found stability through our network, receiving housing support, food, and financial education through Family Houston and other partners. And a Vietnam War veteran, once homeless, found dignity and belonging after being placed in a Texas State Veterans Home through coordinated action with our state partners. Even small moments show the power of collaboration, like the day a VA psychologist reached out to us for help, and a veteran in crisis was connected to Baker Ripley for housing within hours, while that federal provider discovered new local resources to help others. These stories aren't exceptions. They represent a nationally replicable model of coordinated care. When local, state, and federal partners share information and act together, veterans are met with dignity, stability, and hope, not barriers and delay. Our veterans are not liabilities. They are leaders and they are civic assets who vote, volunteer, and build communities at higher rates than the general public. When we invest in their successful transition, we strengthen our workforce, we strengthen our neighborhoods, and we strengthen our nation. The covenant between our government and veterans is sacred, but it cannot stand alone. Federal systems are vital, but they cannot meet every need. Civil society must play a role. Take, for example, the Bush Institute, our partners at this table, who alongside IVMF, Combined Arms, Wounded Warrior Project, and a mixture of best-in-class nonprofits, healthcare institutions, and federal agencies have built a connective tissue network for veterans and their families to seek care. No one organization can do this alone. Combined Arms shows that when innovation, data, and compassion come together, we can deliver real results, faster, smarter, and more human. Our organization stands ready to work with this committee, the VA, and partners at every level of government on bipartisan, data-driven solutions that strengthen the continuum of care for all those who have served. Thank you for the privilege to speak here today. It has been an absolute honor and privilege. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Colonel Carson.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm Barb Carson, the daughter, sister, mother of veterans, and a 30-year veteran myself. On behalf of the Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, I'm honored to discuss how we can ensure that every veteran and family member can thrive after service. The IVMF was founded in 2011 and has served more than 230,000 people through programs in career preparation, entrepreneurship, and community connection. Our core belief is simple. When we get transition right, our country is stronger. Each year, about 200,000 people leave active duty, and data from our collective and collaborative research with Blue Star families consistently shows that roughly half of veteran respondents describe their overall transition as difficult or very difficult. Broader evidence repeatedly finds that navigating the maze of programs and benefits can be overwhelming. And while transitioning to civilian employment, veterans and their families often must start over instead of building on the skills and leadership experience that they gained during service. That is why IVMF worked alongside communities to launch the America Serves Network back in 2015. America Serves is a coordinated referral network that helps veterans and families connect to the right resources at the right time. We grew this model across the country, and today many of those original America Serves communities are operating independently while continuing to collaborate through IVMF's Community of Practice. Through the Community of Practice, we regularly bring together these local networks as well as nonprofit and state leaders, many of whom are VA grantees of critical efforts like the Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Program. Together, they share insights, exchange best practices, and strengthen the depth and breadth of the resource networks that serve veterans nationwide. In short, along with many others on this panel, we are cultivating what RAND and others have called for: coordinated, transparent, and an accountable system. We can all commit to doing the same for transition. How we design and manage these systems matters. Evidence shows that success rates are far higher when a veteran is guided by a trained navigator rather than given simply a curated list of phone numbers. Looking at just the federal transition landscape, it's easy to understand why the support of a trusted navigator is so instrumental and why the need to monitor the process and results is crucial. RAND and GAO identified 46 programs spread across 12 agencies, with the most funding concentrated in education beyond the GI Bill and very little coordination or oversight. The Veteran Metrics Initiative, or TVMI, a comprehensive longitudinal study led by Penn State University, found that 2/3 of post-9/11 veterans used at least one program after leaving service, and those who used multiple programs had better outcomes. Our research with VA has shown similar outcomes for patients who seek non-VA services through formal collaboration. In other words, connection and coordination drive success. At IVMF, we've taken those lessons to heart. Earlier today, IVMF and Hiring Our Heroes, along with 5 proven VSOs in the employment opportunity ecosystem, formally committed to improving our collaboration. Together, we'll strengthen referrals and data sharing to better serve the military-connected population and measure our collective impact. We believe it is time to align our nation's effort through a national veteran strategy, a whole-of-nation framework that includes federal, local, and state government, nonprofits, philanthropy, and the private sector. Such a strategy would establish shared outcome measures, better fund the evaluation efforts, and support cross-sector initiatives that improve navigation and coordination. As part of this strategy, we reinforce RAND's recommendation for more oversight and evaluation of transition programs and encourage data transparency across agencies and sectors. Oversight is not criticism. It is critical stewardship. Veterans are assets to our economy who bring talent, discipline, and leadership to every industry. They're civic leaders who strengthen the communities where they live. When we measure results, share data, and work together, these assets grow. We thank the committee for your leadership, for your continued commitment to those who serve. The Daniello IVMF stands ready to partner with you, with federal agencies, and with our colleagues across civil society to turn these recommendations into meaningful outcomes. Together, we can assure that every veteran and every family who served receives the support that they earned, and that a grateful nation truly does maximize their success after service. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, members of the committee, thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. As a Navy veteran and a student veteran who has used earned benefits for an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's degree, while also now in pursuit of a PhD after my benefits have expired.
Next time you testify, Dr. Lyon, we'll look forward to that.
As will everyone at Syracuse, where I'm pursuing my PhD. So I now have the pleasure to lead Student Veterans of America, and we represent over 1,600 campus chapters, serving over 600,000 student veterans and military-connected students. SVA is where federal policy meets lived experience. VA and DoD set the standard, and we and our partners make it stick on campuses, in classrooms, and at the hiring threshold. We don't replace the VA, we extend it through public-private partnerships and philanthropy. We bring additional capacity at no cost to taxpayers to convert benefits into degrees, careers, and community leadership. We see what aligned systems can deliver. At SVA's national conference this past January, alongside the Department of Veterans Affairs and partners including the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, and the Vietnam Veterans of America, we offered a full-service claims clinic that assisted over 400 veterans and family members and conducted nearly 200 on-site exams in a single weekend. That's the public and private flywheel working. Federal authority plus nonprofit and employer capacity, producing fast, verifiable results. Today's hearing asks how a grateful nation maximizes success after service. Give us the right tools, and the public-private flywheel will spin faster. We offer 3 low-cost steps that this committee can advance now. First, forecast the transition. Each year, roughly 150,000 Americans leave active duty military service. Most of them are under the age of 35, many with or starting families. Yet, campuses, employers, and veteran-serving organizations plan against imprecise estimates. You could direct DoD with the VA to publish annual transition forecasts each summer by component, geography, and broad demographics. The data exist. Organize and share them. With a reliable forecast, the VA, nonprofits, and employers can pre-position advising, childcare, internships, and hiring pipelines where they'll be needed most, turning taxpayers' education investment into timely, local action. Better forecasting data could also shorten the time for filing critical shortage in the fields like nursing with veteran talent. Through research funded by Google.org, we're working with state and university leaders to reduce barriers to education and enhance economic opportunity for veterans. Work that better data coordination would strengthen even further. Second, connect that data. The DoD tracks separations and training. VA tracks education benefits. The Department of Education tracks enrollment. The Department of Labor tracks earnings. These systems don't talk in real time. That leaves Congress and VA flying partially blind on the outcomes. We recommend that VA lead an interagency transition data task force with DoD, Ed, Labor, to deliver within 12 months a pilot that links one cohort separation data, GI Bill enrollment, and early employment outcomes with a report back to this committee. Build it privacy first, consent driven, so that data follow the veteran. Connected data lets Congress oversee impact. It lets VA tune programs, and it lets nonprofits and employers like ours target resources precisely so that every public dollar works even harder. Third is to modernize the VA work-study program. About 3/4 of student veterans work while they are enrolled in college, too often in jobs that are unrelated to their field of study, slowing career momentum and weakening return on the GI Bill. Update VA work study to, number one, align placements to a veteran's degree field, two, allow at least half-time students to participate, and supporting veterans who are parents and caregivers. Three, digitize timekeeping, and four, pilot targeted placements in shortage fields like healthcare, education, cybersecurity, and STEM, and related data skills. Veterans already bring advanced technical and analytical training from their military service. With the right academic pathways and paid work experiences, they can meet the national demand for AI-literate talent and at every major industry, as well as the VA actually needs now. SVA is already working to meet these workforce shortages with partners like the Independence Blue Cross Foundation, expanding pipelines into nursing and allied health through their Service Scholars model. With better transition forecasting, we can shorten the time to hire in critical fields like nursing by allowing advising, critical placements, and employer demand ahead of military separation. And when VA enables career-relevant paid work, SVA's Career Center, made possible by the generous support by the Walt Disney Company, and our employer partners can plug in immediately, opening thousands of aligned roles so that education translates into earnings faster. No new entitlement, just modernizing what taxpayers already fund for. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Elizabeth O'Brien. I am Senior Vice President of Hiring Our Heroes, an initiative of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. I am also an active duty spouse for more than 20 years during our nation's longest conflict, and the proud mom of a midshipman at the United States Naval Academy. I have seen firsthand how critical it is that our nation's gratitude for service is translated into action. For more than a decade, Hiring Our Heroes has helped transform how the military community connects to meaningful careers. Working directly on installations and through a national employer network, we now serve more than 80,000 veterans, service members, and spouses each year, and over 1 million to date. A grateful nation, maximizing veteran success after service embodies the purpose behind our work, standing shoulder to shoulder with the VA to build innovative pathways that empower veterans to thrive long after they hang up the uniform. That is why today we're so proud to be a part of the newly formed Veteran Employment Collective, a bold national coalition designed to transform how veterans and military spouses navigate their career journey. The collective brings together the nation's leading veteran and spouse-serving nonprofits, employers, and government partners around one mission, ensuring every member of the military community has access to meaningful career opportunities. It tackles a long-standing challenge: too many programs, too little coordination. Through a seamless referral and data sharing system, a coordinated approach that removes duplication, and shared outcome-based metrics that demonstrate real impact. Last year alone, Hiring Our Heroes made over 44,000 referrals to partner organizations. The volume proves that structured collaboration is not just beneficial, it's essential. The collective's founding partners are creating a no wrong door network where veterans and spouses can access trusted, high-quality support when they enter the system. For more than a decade, Hiring Our Heroes has operated one of the nation's largest and longest-running skill bridge programs, the HOH Fellows Program. The 12-week internship places transitioning service members directly into civilian companies. Over the past 5 years, we have connected over 10,000 service members with 2,500 employers nationwide. 88% of them receive job offers within 3 months of completion. While we strengthen the ecosystem, we're also innovating at the program level. This summer, in partnership with the Lowe's Foundation, we launched the HOH Skilled Trades Academy in Jacksonville, North Carolina, at no cost to participants. The pilot is a 6-week hands-on training program for transitioning service members, veterans, and spouses. The first class 8 veterans, graduates next week. The pilot is the foundation of a national model, and in 2026, we will add 3 more skilled trades academy, including one in the National Capital Region, one near Joint Base Lewis-McChord in Washington State, one in Phoenix, Arizona. These efforts align with federal policy under Public Law 119-21 and with more than 400,000 open manufacturing jobs as well nationwide. Each program is designed to improve veterans' financial wellness while easing pressure on the VA to address underemployment and homelessness. Finally, we must recognize a veteran's success is often tied to the military spouse's opportunity. The Military Spouse Career Accelerator pilot, which Hiring Our Heroes facilitated in partnership with the Department of War and Deloitte, has become one of the most effective tools to closing that gap. Since 2022 in December, more than 1,200 military spouses have completed 12-week fellowships through MSCAP with an 86% job offer rate and more than half of the positions remote or hybrid. This summer, the department announced a strategic pause in placements as it transitions from pilot to permanent program in 2026. We respect the process, but the timing is difficult. In an environment of furloughs and economic uncertainty, spouses who already face unemployment at 6 times higher than their civilian peers need access today to those opportunities now more than ever. Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, members of the committee, the Veteran Employment Collective, the HOH Skilled Trades Academy, and the Military Spouse Career Accelerator pilot represent a whole-of-nation approach to veteran and family success and lead to American prosperity. We remain committed to leading this work with our partners across every sector and building systems worthy of those who serve. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Hermes.
Thank you to Chairman Moran and Ranking Member Blumenthal and members of the committee for having me here today. As an Air Force veteran and actively serving reservist, I'm deeply appreciative of the opportunities provided to me by the Air Force Reserve, but I'm here today testifying solely in my civilian capacity as Yale University's liaison for Veteran and Military Affairs. I'm here to discuss veterans transitioning out of the military and into higher education, and to share Yale's commitment to veterans and their families, as well as our partnerships with veteran serving organizations. This overview is not exhaustive, but it highlights common services that our veterans frequently use. Student veterans at Yale College come from the enlisted ranks. They may enroll as first-year students, transfer students, or in our Eli Whitney Students Program for non-traditional students. Eli Whitney students take the same in-person classes as other undergraduates and have access to the same majors, faculty, instructors, and advisors, extracurricular activities, research opportunities, and international experiences. The program's flexibility allows students to enroll in courses full or part-time, and its advisors have experience guiding adult students. In 2017, Yale College had 17 veterans. Today, we have 58 student veterans from every branch of service, including our first Space Force veteran. This almost fourfold increase in 8 years is due to Yale's partnership with organizations that support veterans preparing for and applying to college, and Yale's deep commitment for making education accessible and affordable for all veterans. Yale College continues to meet 100% of financial need for all students. As a result, 100% of our undergraduate student veterans attend Yale at little or no cost. Veterans are not required to use VA benefits before accessing Yale's financial aid, and many students choose to utilize Yale's financial aid so they may preserve their VA benefits for future studies or transfer them to eligible dependents. All 14 of Yale's schools participate in the Yellow Ribbon Program. The following services support veterans to and through Yale. The Warrior Scholar Project was started by a Yale Eli Whitney student 15 years ago, and in partnerships with colleges nationwide, provides intensive one-week academic boot camps for enlisted transitioning service members. Having taught at this program at Yale, I can tell you from personal experience that this program gives enlisted veterans the confidence to know they have the skills to succeed at a school like Yale. Once students have the desire to attend a highly competitive institution, they turn to Service to Schools, a nonprofit organization that provides free college application counseling to military veterans and service members. Students also come to Yale through the Research Experience for Veteran Undergraduates, a 9-week summer program where enlisted veterans conduct STEM research and build skills to become research scientists. Yale Veteran and Military Affairs serves as an umbrella program to support students, faculty, staff, and alumni, and to assist veterans in accessing services and resources, both internal and external to Yale. We have permanent space co-located with our Office of Student Accessibility Services to offer events, programs, and disability accommodations that support our students. Our student veterans have access to VA medical facility in neighboring West Haven, as well as the Yale Health Plan. Yale Mental Health and Counseling is an additional benefit that offers students a wide range of urgent and long-term services. One of the toughest parts of leaving the service is leaving a close team of colleagues who are intent on working towards a collective mission. We are committed to bringing together the broader Yale veteran and military community to support each other and build camaraderie. Yale has an active veteran alumni group, an employee group, and offers multiple options to earn a commission. Currently, we have over 100 students working towards a commission into 5 branches of the U.S. military. Yale has been teaching and preparing leaders for service in the military and civilian sectors for over 300 years and fully recognizes the important role that veterans play in our society. Personally, I'm thankful for Yale's support of my own continuing military service, and I'm proud to support my brothers and sisters in ours as they work towards their future education and career goals. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, all of you. Let me begin with a couple of questions. There's a significant number of veterans who don't access either health care benefits or disability benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I think those numbers are about 51% do access health care and 42% do access disability. And it may be that you can tell me that this is not true. There may be veterans who don't need those services or services from the department. And there may be those who don't know about the services that are available. In fact, I know that is true. And there may be some veterans who know but don't want those services. What role does any of your organizations or all of your organizations play in meeting the needs of someone who is not enrolled in the VA? And is there a special opportunity or responsibility to meet the needs of those not accessing care in the formal governmental services kind of way? How do you see your role in that, and why is that necessary for meeting the needs of those who serve?
Mr. Chairman, I'll start. I really appreciate the question because when we look at these benefits that are available to veterans, there's often the, do I need it? Does someone else need it? But they're earned, right? And so if you earn them, they're available to you. When you look at those accessing care or the benefits that they've earned, be it disability and compensation, education and training benefits, the VA home loan, all of these things, we see utilization, and the VA's own data supports it. The VA struggles to reach out to one age demographic above all others, veterans under the age of 45. And veterans under the age of 45 that have made a transition most recently are more likely than not to be what we call non-retirees. So those individuals that serve 8 years or less of active duty guard or reserve. And that population tends to be like myself, former enlisted, making their way through education and training as they move forward. So what Student Veterans of America works with is, one, to try to educate the population on what they've earned so that if they should decide they need it, it's available to them. And
Jared,
two,
Mr.
yes,
Lyon,
sir.
let me ask you, do most of the veterans who you provide assistance to, are they enrolled in the VA? Or do they come to you without that
They come to
experience?
us without it overwhelmingly, sir. Over 80% don't access the benefits that they've earned beyond that of the GI Bill. It's why we're working with the Department of Veterans Affairs to try to provide better awareness for veterans under the age of 45 who were prior enlisted and non-retirees. When you look at the data, it's retirees most likely that access disability and compensation at far higher rates than non-retirees.
Others want to comment on that topic? Yeah, Mr. Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of the veterans that we see coming into Combined Arms front door, on average, 41% are actually already using VA healthcare or benefits. 39% are not enrolled, and around 18 to 20% are in the current application or planning to apply. So one of the first things that the Combined Arms technology does is says, are you interested in being connected to VA healthcare and VA benefits? If so, that's one of the first referrals that gets automated in the system. So one of the beginning steps is inform and educate. You know, it's a broad assumption, but what I've heard anecdotally is either unaware of the support services that were out there, or as even some of the Combined Arms employees that are veterans have a great career, great benefits, not interested in it. My personal vignette is, you know, I had a great transition story on paper, and where I was hired and offered full-time employment with General Electric a year before I transitioned out of the military. I didn't do anything with the VA originally, right? I'm fine, I'm all set, great healthcare, great benefits with the company. And it actually took my dad, who was a career Army officer, served 23 years, kind of bopped me on the head and said, what are you doing? You should be connecting with the VA. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. Thank you.
Let me follow up, and there may be others who want to comment, but let me follow up. So how are those who serve, these veterans, who have not accessed care at the VA, any kind of assistance, why are they able to find you but not the VA, or why do they want to find you and not the VA?
I can say how they find us, which is funny and also frustrating, Mr. Chairman. You know, we spend a considerable amount of money in marketing dollars to try and reach veterans as far upstream as possible, get the word out about Combined Arms and our partner network. And it always comes back to us, how did you hear about Combined Arms? We joke in the military, the E4 Mafia, the Lance Corporal Underground. It is word of mouth and is how our community thrives. It's trust, delivery of services, and people recommending what's worked for them. After the hundreds of thousands, millions over the years and 10 years that we spent on marketing, it always comes back to, how did you hear about this? Oh, a buddy I served with, someone I served with told me about this.
Mr. Galui, you seem to want to answer that question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This was one of the reasons why Check-In was created. For President Bush inspiring this in 2016, wanted those who served to get the help, whether it was through VA or not. And Mr. Hutchins mentioned a key word, that word being trust. And so at the Bush Institute, we don't necessarily work directly with veterans and their families. We work with the institutions and organizations, the leading ones that do. So the way folks find their way to Check-In is through the Veteran Wellness Alliance that I mentioned during my testimony. Organizations like Student Veterans of America are part of the VWA, as is Combined Arms. And so when veterans decide, whenever in their transition timeline, whatever that might be, to join a veteran peer network, is through that network where someone who they trust on their side will suggest to them that they should check out Check-In. And that's how they find their way to our program called Check-In.
Trust matters. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Ms. Hermes, I remember well my own transition, such as it was when I was in the Marine Corps Reserves. I finished the full-time part of my obligation 5 weeks into the Yale semester. Other law schools that I'd been admitted to said there's no way you can start law school 5 weeks late, but I showed up at Yale, and frankly, it all sounded like Greek to me. In fact, it was Latin, stare decisis, collateral estoppel, but Yale, even before its present program, embraced veterans and provided the help that was needed for that transition. And Since then, universities and colleges and schools have followed the model of really welcoming veterans as Yale does. So I want to commend all the schools that have the kinds of programs that you've described that Yale has pioneered. But I'm frustrated that the VA has failed to do its part. There have been widespread and egregious delays in the GI Bill payments that are causing real harm to our veterans and survivors and their families. They're still left to cover rent and tuition. And schools may be flexible about tuition, but landlords may not get it because they've got bills to pay too. And the VA's failure to pay these veterans the Article 35 benefits on time has real-life consequences. I'd like to enter an article from Stars and Stripes into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
And it says, quote, more than 75,000 students affected by VA payment delays for education benefits. I also have an article from Military Times, if there's no objection, Mr. Chairman.
No objection.
Quote, VA tech glitch halts GI Bill payments to thousands, advocates say. And just so there's no doubt, this article quotes one of the veterans advocates, Ashline Haycock Lohman, Director of Government and Legislative Affairs for the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, as saying, quote, the shutdown is not the cause of this, and it needs to be very clear that the reason that this happened is because VA's infrastructure failed and they chose not to tell us until after the shutdown started. VA could have told us in August. These delays began in August, well before the shutdown. They are not due to the shutdown, but they've been aggravated by the furloughs and firings and cuts that the Secretary has unnecessarily imposed before and after the shutdown. For example, Secretary Collins' choice to furlough IT technicians and shut down the GI Bill hotline. I wrote a letter to the VA, October 9th, demanding answers, and so far, VA has provided none, has not even responded to my letter. Answers about what can be done as well as what the causes are. Perhaps you can speak to how student veterans are affected when VA fails to deliver GI Bill payments promptly.
Thank you, Senator. We are facing the same challenges described in the media for student veterans across the country. We are able to provide some safety net type funding depending on the situation, but many of these benefits, particularly the Chapter 35 that you mentioned, are paid directly to families where we have less flexibility. We also, though we acknowledge that the delay happened before the government shutdown, we have been facing significant customer service delays and interruptions due to the layoffs that also have occurred during the past year. That administrative piece has definitely been felt by our students when they're looking to solve a problem or correct a situation.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchings, Combined Arms connects hundreds of thousands of veterans to high-quality resources, including food banks, housing, and emergency financial assistance. Your organization has reported, I believe, an increased reliance by veterans' families on food banks and financial and housing assistance. The Trump administration, as you well know, has refused to distribute SNAP benefits. It's a disaster for many of those recipients, if not all of them, but particularly for 1.2 million veterans who rely on SNAP. There are certain populations of veterans who are most at risk for homelessness and hunger, and how do you target them for services?
Thank you for your question, Senator. It is a very serious concern, and thank you for bringing attention to it. What we have seen, data drives everything that we do at Combined Arms. And so we look at the data on a daily basis, and we have right now over 70 different data visualization dashboards on the pulse, the health, the demand of veterans and military families across the nation based on real-time transactions that occur in the system. And so here recently, we have seen a surge in food insecurity and housing assistance requests. For food insecurity, within the past 30 days, about a 46% month-over-month increase in food security assistance, and then around 36% in housing support, financial assistance, rent, mortgage, utility payments. And I think that's the beauty of this collective network in organizations like Combined Arms, that if there are gaps and if there are pauses in the government, organizations can stand ready to help fill these gaps from a short-term capacity, not long-term, but short-term capacity. And I think with continued opportunity for integration with federal agencies, we can be more prepared in the future, more resilient, and ensure that veterans and military families get the support that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I don't know quite how to say it, but for me, any veteran household going hungry is an abomination. Any veteran going homeless is absolutely abhorrent. And I want to thank all of you because I know you're seeking and in many instances succeeding in providing for veterans in the face of these gaps in federal support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sheehy.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. As a combat veteran myself, married to a combat vet who got out and had to go through the transition experience, this is a topic particularly poignant to me and my wife and our family. So, you know, anybody can answer, but you know, do you feel that the VA is a partner in the transition process, or an idle bystander, or an opponent? How do you feel the VA exists in your transition ecosystem?
I'm happy to address this both
Go ahead.
from the Bush Institute perspective and my own personal perspective. I, too, a combat veteran. My wife, also a combat veteran, sitting behind me as part of my support staff today, along with my daughter. As individually, VA has been certainly a partner in my transition. I have not personally experienced any delays with VA on both my payments from VA personally, and then also my son, who attends Quinnipiac University in Connecticut, and their wonderful veteran coordinator there has been very helpful. From the Bush Institute perspective, VA, as I mentioned in my testimony, is a member of the Veteran Wellness Alliance. And since its inception, the VA has partnered with us closely across multiple administrations. And it's through that collaboration and cooperation and forecasting that we're able to have a strong partnership with VA, and we can have an open dialogue. Again, this has been true both in this administration and the previous administrations.
Liz O'Brien, Hiring Our Heroes. We focus solely on economic opportunity. In terms of how the VA partners with us through multiple administrations, they have come alongside of us, to include their Chico, Tracy Thurrott, who has worked very closely with us to ensure that we are creating opportunities for military spouses to go to work within the VA structure across the country. And as you know, that's unbelievably important, that if we can get a military spouse a job, it increases the likelihood of a service member remaining in service. The VA has also continued to partner with us on local installations. You know, from 2011 to 13, we were hosting hundreds and hundreds of hiring fairs for veterans as they returned to their communities. And about halfway through 2013, we said, well, why are we waiting until they return as unemployed veterans? We need to be on the installations, multiple locations across the globe, to make sure that we're meeting them and sharing about transition long before they transition. And so the ability to meet service members while they're in service and create educational opportunities around what transition looks like, and the VA has been a part of that through multiple administrations for us. So we feel like they are investing in economic opportunity for when service members are preparing to transition, and also being supportive of how we put military spouses to work.
Senator, I love the question. Thank you for your service and the service of your wife. The VA in spirit is a 100% collaborative partner in everything that we're doing. And I think all of my colleagues would agree. In function, some days they are adversarial, right? In particular, when it comes to allocating the funds that this body puts forward specifically for like technology improvements. It is one of the frustrating things about the GI Bill and other VA administered benefits that can be a challenge in that by the time the law gets passed, allocations get done from this body, and then get all the way down to the person that's executing them, sometimes it can be a bit frustrating to see old, outdated systems that funds have been put towards that are still old, outdated, frustrating systems. But in spirit, they are partners.
Yeah, and I think, there can be great people buried in a bad bureaucracy. And that's true of anywhere. It's not the VA, that's just bureaucracy writ large. But I think, it was a bit of a leading question in that, what you just mentioned is, for example, we're looking at agriculture in America and the slow, it's actually not that slow, pretty rapid death of multi-generation ag in this country as we're seeing farms close, we're seeing families recognize that the dirt that the farm sits on is worth a hell of a lot more than the crops that the farm creates. And they make the decision, which you can't blame them for making that decision. Hey, I'm gonna set up my kids for a future, and I'm gonna sell this farm or ranch, and we're gonna get out of the business, and they can go invest it in the NASDAQ and do a hell of a lot better than soybeans and cattle. But we also have a system of incentives that doesn't support that. When I was getting out, you can get a VA home loan for a four-bedroom condo in Miami, but you can't use that same loan to purchase producing agriculture land, which feeds America. And I think whether you're an entrepreneur, I got out and started a business with an all-veteran founding team. The incentives haven't historically been there to start a business, and sometimes that's good. A lot of veterans shouldn't start a business; they should get a job. But where I'm going with this is I think, that, as you said, Jared, the spirit is there to support transition, but transition shouldn't be the goal. That's a step in the goal. The goal is to have America take advantage of the tremendous talent that we've invested in and created in our veteran population. Our veterans are not charity. They don't need handouts. They don't want handouts. And the goal shouldn't be to build a box of freebies for every veteran. It should be let America take advantage of the amazing training and development we've given these individuals so they come back and they serve their country again in another way, whether it's as nonprofit leaders, whether it's at a top university, whether it's starting a business or feeding America as a farmer or going to work for a tech company. And I think our transition process should be less focused on the transaction of transitioning and on the creation of the veterans' benefits, the loans, the programs aren't there to serve themselves. They're there to create a return on investment with that veteran who gives back to America and finds an empowering career going forward. And I think we're grappling with this in the wake of America's longest war. As we've had a very tiny percentage of our veterans, very tiny percentage of Americans has served the whole country. We've never had this small amount of people do multiple deployments back over and over and over and over again. Now they come home and we have to find, how they find the next chapter. So thank you for the work you're doing. And I would encourage you to continue to engage with us on how we can help the VA be a really meaningful partner. And also the branches, the active duty branches, let's make sure they're alongside in that journey. So thanks for everything you're doing.
Senator Sheehy, thank you. Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me echo something Senator Blumenthal talked about and really point out something that I think has not gotten enough attention, and that is that 1.2 million of our veterans rely on SNAP. That is about a third of them are over the age of 65 and 40% are disabled. We know right now that President Trump is blocking them from getting the SNAP benefits they need so they don't go hungry. The money to fund SNAP exists. Trump has chosen not to use that funding, and his administration said they were going to do partial benefits, they'd be late, and then he posted yesterday on Truth Social he's going to block it altogether. So now we are, of course, hearing reports of veterans flocking to food banks. They're not sure where their next meal is going to come from. Mr. Chairman, my family was one of those families. My dad was a veteran. He got multiple sclerosis, and we had to rely on food stamps for a while. So this is not something we should tolerate. The money exists. It is supposed to go out, and I hope every member of this committee lets the administration know that they need that money to get out. Mr. Lyon, let me just ask you about that. What are you hearing from your members who do rely on SNAP, and tell me why it's so important to student veterans in particular?
Senator Murray, thank you so much for the question and your ongoing support for our community. At Student Veterans of America, we leverage a lot of research. Basic needs has been something that we've been looking into for the better part of the last 5 years. Food and housing insecurity are remaining challenges for veterans in higher education. To leverage a Yale example, there was a young naval aviator who got out of the military after World War II, attended Yale as an undergraduate, was a baseball player, got married and had 2 kids while he was at Yale, all having the GI Bill fund all of that. That was George H.W. Bush. That notwithstanding, the GI Bill is not like that anymore. The GI Bill is designed for a single person that heads back to school. And when you look at the modern student veteran, over half are married or in a committed relationship with children when they head back to school. Another 20% of us are single parents while we're back in school. And over 75% of us are working full-time while we are in school, just trying to make ends meet. It is very difficult to transition without a military pension, without health care for life, and that is what the average veteran is doing when they head back to school. So it's no surprise to see benefits like SNAP and other things being relied on while you're back in school and trying to make ends meet. When those benefits go away, veterans are impacted, and more than that, their family members that rely on these benefits are impacted as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, I urge all of our committee members to let the administration know that money's there. They're legally required to obligate it, get it out. We have people who need that. Let me ask about Colonel Hermes about women veterans. They are the fastest growing demographic of veterans, and I personally have heard from many women veterans that when they return home to civilian life, people don't respect their service or assume that they are a military spouse, not the actual veteran. And it is disturbing that we now have a Secretary of Defense who takes every opportunity to insult women who've been in the military, and that really, I believe, adds to the barriers that women face now when they return to civilian life. So talk to us a little bit about some of the barriers that women veterans in particular face when they come home and seek civilian employment.
Yes, Senator, thank you. That is a very important question for our society to wrestle with, and as I'm here for Yale today, I'm going to frame it in terms of higher education. In our group of enlisted student veterans, which my testimony focused on because that's our most vulnerable group, we have a very small number of women, and I'm going to even say parents or families, because it is very difficult, just like Mr. Lyon mentioned, to support a family while you're going to college. The GI Bill benefits, the benefits that, federal benefits that we're able to give even institutionally can't support some families as they leave the military. So that's a huge challenge, and I think that's something that our society needs to keep wrestling with, and we could talk to the VA about programs that could support that in the future nationwide, not just at one school or another.
Thank you very much. I have run out of time, but this is something I'm very concerned about. When we hear discussions about DEI and then it impacts women who we need in our military, and not just then, but when they come home and they are a veteran, they actually don't want to identify as a veteran or don't see themselves as a veteran, and they then don't get the services and benefits that they've earned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator Hassan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Blumenthal, for this hearing today. And thank you to our witnesses, not only for being here today and sharing your expertise and time with us and your advocacy for veterans, but to each and every one of you who has served. Thank you so much for your service. Lieutenant Colonel Galui, I want to start with a question to you. I'd like to discuss the importance of making sure that veterans get connected to resources and how facilitating that connection can often require trust and understanding with a veteran. In your testimony, you discussed the check-in program, and you detailed how veterans who reach out for help through the program are first connected with one of 2 social workers who have an understanding of where the veteran's coming from. One social worker is a veteran, and the other is married to a veteran. I think this hits on something really important. Veterans need to trust that when they need help, the person they connect with can understand where that veteran is coming from. And that's something that Senator Ernst and I worked on with the VA and the American Legion through the Buddy Check Week, where veterans are encouraged to check in with each other, because we know that peer-to-peer relationships can be critically important. As a veteran yourself, can you please discuss the benefits for veterans who are seeking resources when they're connected with somebody who understands them and their experiences?
Senator, thank you for that question. I think Senator Moran said this a little while ago, that trust is everything.
Yeah.
And it truly is. I mean, this entire American experiment that we're all persevering in is built on trust.
Right.
And likewise, in the veteran transition, when seeking care, specifically through the Bush Institute's check-in program in mental and brain health care, it is critically important that the veteran trusts the initial contact that they have. And as I wrote in the testimony, one of two women who are part of Wounded Warrior Project, again, they're part of the Veteran Wellness Alliance. Yeah. Those two women personally respond to the person reaching out for care. And within a short conversation, the veteran on the other side of the phone will recognize that Susan or Kristen truly understand them. And when we reference check-in connects people to high-quality care, part of that high-quality definition that we partnered with RAND to define was veteran-centered.
Sure. And I'm going to follow up, Ms. Hermes, on the line that Senator Murray was pursuing, because one of the things I hear in New Hampshire from women veterans is how lonely they feel in trying to find other women veterans in our small state, especially in our rural areas. So can you speak to the need of women to be able to connect with other women veterans?
Thank you, Senator. That's definitely true. I think it's true for all veterans. We want the students to integrate into our community and share their diverse perspectives, but we have had great luck with having mentoring groups, social groups, even casual meetups among our grad student women veterans and undergrad women veterans and cadets and midshipmen as they prepare to serve. So it's a great point that you make, that connection helps women veterans learn about these resources and take advantage of them, and helps them feel supported.
Thank you very much for that and for your work. Colonel Carson, in your testimony, you discussed how veterans face what can be a complicated and confusing process to get help during their transition from military service to civilian life. You also mentioned the importance of making sure that these veterans are able to find the right resources at the right time, specific to their individual needs. Senator Kramer and I worked on this with our bipartisan Solid Start Act. That requires the VA to reach out to veterans at least 3 times within their first year of leaving the military, with a focus on trying to meet each veteran's individual needs. From your perspective, what are some additional things that we can do to help make sure that tailored, useful, timely information is provided to transitioning veterans?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'll build on what Mr. Lyon said as well, that we want forecasts can help, and encouraging it service members and making it easier for them to be enrolled in VA. Of course, they have agency, but that would be a great assistance. Each service member does complete an individual assessment. We want the members to have privacy their concerns considered, but if we can know what they need as they come out through trusted partnerships, which we do have with the VA, we can all better serve them.
Thank you. I'm running out of time. I did want to just touch on, with Colonel Carson and Ms. O'Brien, the issue of military spouse employment. I will follow up with a longer question, but just really appreciate your work on this, because I think one of the things we really need to focus on, Mr. Chair, around this issue is how the problem of military spouses not being fully employed or employed to their qualifications can really build over years, and it poses kind of this mounting cumulative impact. So I'll follow up with a question to the record on that, but thank you both for your attention to that, as well as so many other things, and thanks to the whole panel. It's really an important panel for us, and as the chairman and ranking member said at the beginning, we don't usually get this cross-section of nonprofits who are so critical to the network that we need to have to really make sure we're not only saying how much we appreciate veterans, but showing them with real action that we do. Thank you.
Senator Hassan, thank you. Senator Cassidy, recognized.
And I'm going to pick up kind of where Senator Hassan left off, and you'll see why, quite obviously. Colonel Carson, Senator Hassan and I have introduced, and she may have mentioned it, bipartisan legislation to extend and enhance the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. Now, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit gives the employer a credit on the amount of money that he or she would spend to hire somebody for like a 2-year period. And the idea is to help those who might have an issue with transitioning. So think of the one eligibility or the people leaving the service. I like that. As a physician, we've learned that the first 6 months after someone leaves service is one of the key times in which they may commit suicide. That loss of structure. And sir, I saw your testimony speaking about General Eisenhower, like didn't have a clue how to do a career change. And as Senator Hassan pointed out, that we are extending this, we hope, to the spouse of someone who is a veteran, knowing that their movement, constant movement, may have made it difficult for her to have long-term employment. So any thoughts about that bill, the importance thereof, and why not all my colleagues shouldn't be co-sponsors?
Thank you, Senator Cassidy, for the question. I appreciate very much that it incentivizes the private sector to be involved in this, solving this problem with us. And that, yes, it's crucial that military spouses are included in that number. I believe the Department of Labor also has looked at including spouses as displaced workers. So the benefits are there. We help navigate these military spouses that we see to these opportunities and prepare them. The same is crucial for veterans, as you said. That first year is incredibly difficult. Liz O'Brien and I have stacked programs together to build bridges. For example, our program offers credentials. She has pathways for fellowships with employers. And if the employers are looking for our talent that we can help prepare for that opportunity, all the better. So we are supportive.
Now, I'm going to toss this out because I can speak from intuition that a spouse who's been a trailing spouse during the career of someone who's in the service would not have a work record that looks like they've been able to stay at a job for a long period of time. But can anybody put numbers on that and put succinctly how we can help people understand the importance of giving that spouse opportunity for the Work Opportunity Tax Credit? Ms. Hermes, anyone?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate the nod that military spouses are included in this. For over a decade, I was a college basketball coach and then married my husband. And we went through a process where we moved 7 times in 9 years. And so as we moved, you can see where I was coaching at Hofstra University, I was coaching at West Point, I was coaching at University of Hawaii, and then I was coaching at Division II schools as we continued to move across the country and eventually ended up in Germany, where options were slightly limited, as you can imagine. And so when we moved back to the States, I had to make a decision. I love to work, it's meaningful, it's purposeful, and it contributes income to my family. And so now can you imagine when I show up at the age of 40 at Hiring Our Heroes, looking for them to help me find a different pathway, and instead they offer me a job as a coordinator, right? And so who else but somebody that's in this space is going to understand that there is tremendous value in my work history. And so one of the pieces that we work on and work alongside the IVMF is, one, the research that is out there, how do we translate it for the employers? How do we work alongside hiring managers, not just the recruiters, to make sure they're educated to understand what a nonlinear resume looks like and how to figure out what are the skills underlying in each of those positions. And so as we work with our employers, we're also encouraging them to embrace skills-based opportunities. And so as you look at the Work Opportunity Credit, we're grateful that you're including military spouses. We believe they belong there, and encourage employers potentially to provide feedback in what the administrative burden of being able to include military spouses. It is very difficult for employers who are highly regulated to ask the status, a marital status of a potential employee. And so as you work on that, that would be one piece I would flag.
Wait, so if they would say, I like your term, nonlinear resume.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a nonlinear resume. Well, it's because I've been married to a guy that's been transferred 9 times in 7 years.
Yeah.
But they can't, unless you volunteer it, they can't say, it looks like you've moved a lot. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, well, savvy hiring managers often do, which causes military spouses to be eliminated very quickly. But when Jared applies for a job, or Colonel Carson, you can identify as a veteran. It is very difficult for an employer or a company to put on their military spouse, right? Because that is asking me what my marital status is. And so it requires an effort by employers working with their legal teams to be able to put, under the identifying status when you're applying to have military spouse on there. In theory, the companies we've worked with who have been able to navigate it, it then puts the military spouse to the hiring manager who is familiar with what a military spouse resume looks like, or a veteran resume.
Very helpful. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Ms. O'Brien, let me clarify for at least me. So there is also a downside to indicating that you're a military spouse because it suggests lack of consistent presence. So it's a double-edged sword. If you're not one of the companies that are interested in hiring the spouses of veterans, you may decide not to hire somebody because of the instability of the circumstance. Is that true?
100% true.
Okay. Senator King.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. 2 points initially. First, I want to thank you for calling this important hearing and assembling this very impressive group of witnesses. Following on that, I want to emphasize something Senator Sheehy said. You know more than we do, and don't let your contributions to our work end today. In other words, keep in touch. And as thoughts come out based on the hearing, let us know and give suggestions where we can help with authorities, with programs in the VA, with coordination efforts, all of those things. You are a tremendous resource, and I want to thank you. And Ms. Hermes, I also want to hope that you will convey my thanks to Yale because Yale is the reason for everything I've achieved in my life. The reason for that is that when they rejected me at the law school, I dedicated my life to making them regret the decision. And it served me very well. Really what we're talking about is transition. I believe that the Department of Defense and the VA combined should spend as much time, money, and effort on transition as they do on recruiting. And I think there's a lot of activity, and I think it's improved recently, but it really still is not where it wants to be. There are 2 or 3 issues that I've been involved with, and I'd like your quick thoughts. One is pre-enrolling in VA healthcare before you leave active duty. You're nodding. Is that a good idea?
Yes, Senator, absolutely.
So that there's not that gap of where do I go and how do I move. Secondly, Form 2648 has a box on it that says if you opt in, if you want to have your contact information shared with the state veterans agency, we'd like to change that to an opt-out because people often just don't check boxes, and reverse the presumption so that people, unless they object to it, they can have their contact. My idea is if you get a state veterans organization, that state veterans structure that's in connection with VSOs, I would like somebody to meet the new veteran when they're coming to the airport. And that won't happen unless you have this, reverse this presumption. Is that something, Mr. Lyons, for example, that you think is a good idea?
You could envision the honor flights that we bring to D.C. to see the nation's monuments to take that same concept to a newly returning veteran, to a community. All politics is local, all transition is local. To the extent that we could meet them at the airport, that would be phenomenal, sir. Yes, sir.
But we can't do it unless we know that they're coming, and the only way to know that is if their contact information is conveyed. So you would support that change?
We would support that change, the opt-out.
Finally, TAP promotion, that is having VSOs involved in the TAP process before the active duty member leaves. That strikes me as just common sense. Is that, you're nodding, I hope that doesn't go in the record. This guy can't record nods. So can I get a?
Yes, Senator, we agree. Having VSOs involved would be a great idea.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Hutchings, I'm fascinated by your website. And in fact, coming into this hearing, not being fully aware of what Combined Arms did, my suggestion was that the VA should create such a website, but it sounds like you've pretty well done it. The question is, how do we make veterans aware of this really rich resource that you've created? And again, maybe it should be on a form somewhere check here if you want to hear from a website provider that can give you access to literally 40,000 resources across the country. How can we help get this resource that you've created into more veterans' hands?
Thank you for your question, Senator. And to your earlier point, I will keep in touch. 3 very commonsensical recommendations you made that I think we all agree with. So that is, a question that we're constantly struggling and iterating with as an organization. I think all of the respective organizations here as well is how can we make people more aware of our partnerships, our collaborations, our collectives, like the one that was just announced here recently. And I think it's continued discussion and continued integration in the form of pilots with federal agencies, with state agencies.
But one thing that might help is if as a veteran's walking out the door, they're handed a card with the website.
Yep.
Or with a series of websites saying, different, if you're planning to go to school, here's student veterans, and we've just got to, it's a matter of making connections. And again, I'm trying to think of how this can be done through the official process where everybody is passing through, rather than people who hear it by word of mouth. So, make
Senator,
some
if I
suggestions on
could,
that.
you said it at the beginning of your remarks. If the DoD and the VA were working together to spend as much on transition as we do on recruitment, it's bringing the Department of Defense to the table as well to hold an equal part and an accountable part to that transition.
Yeah, and we're spending most of the time here talking about the VA, but the Department of Defense is a big, big part of this. That's where it starts. So, again, share your ideas, but I think this is a very important hearing. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Senator King. Senator Slotkin.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks to all of you. If you're coming to me, you're almost at the end. I'm at the end of the line here. Thank you for what all of you do. I think, I'm a former CIA officer and Pentagon official. I did 3 tours alongside the military in Iraq, and I was a military spouse. So thank you for working on this very important issue. A couple of years ago in 2020, when I was in the House, I had a bunch of veterans come up to me actually at a veteran event in Howell, Michigan, and say, they just had no idea what they were eligible for, right? Typical, like, I heard there's programs, but I don't know. And so we wrote, along with senators on this committee, something called the Solid Start Act that was signed into law in 2022, which required the VA to reach out 3 times in the first year of separation to ensure that we're showing our, all the services that the VA has. Again, many of these would be solved by opting out instead of opting in if we had just kind of signed people up for VA healthcare originally. But this was my attempt at least having some outreach. And it's good, but I think the thing that I'm struggling with is, with all the programs that you all wonderfully do, how do we make sure that people even have any idea? And while a signing up for something and checking a card and all that might have worked with veterans of my age, right, the 9/11 era, the newest veterans are going to be coming out of service with no even history of reading their snail mail, of even reading email. It's all digital, right? It's all, how do we get to them? So how do we, I guess this is a question I'm going to just, because I maybe ask Jared if you could answer, or Mr. Lyon, excuse me. How do you amalgamate all the services so that our newest veterans will have a one-stop shop? And then how do you make it available in a form that they want to consume it in, not what their parents' generation wanted to consume it in?
So first off, thank you for your service as well, Senator. And I appreciate the question. I wish there were an easier answer, and I'm not sure that there is. It starts with organizations like ours here that have been invited to testify today, and we're grateful for those invites. We collaborate outside of rooms like this too, which is important. But I think that something that should be known is the majority of us that are going to get out are going to be enlisted like I was. And the majority of those that get out as enlisted are not going to retire. And when we think about the localized aspect of transition and returning back home to a small town in Michigan or anywhere in the country, it starts with those units. I mean, people don't get out of the Army, they get out of their unit. They don't get out of the Navy, they get out of the Navy from a ship. They're getting out at the smallest level of service. And if we tied officer promotion evals, for instance, to the transition success of their troops, you would see a shocking improvement in the transition process.
Yes.
So that's one radical idea for you, Senator.
Yeah, I like that one. That's good. I just think we need to be thinking about how the next generation is going to be consuming their information. And, I was pushing for, hey, let's move from snail mail, because people don't know their addresses, where they're going to end up when they separate. So let's at least go to email. Like, I was pushing for the big development of taking their email address when they separated their civilian email address. But I think we need to think differently, particularly since our private sector companies certainly know how to target different communities and pump them the algorithms. Like, I want to pump the veteran the algorithm of like, hey, there's a new program. You can get discounted Disney tickets. Hey, there's a whatever
At the unit level, that's the first sergeant or the chief, right? Like, have them there, meeting their troops kneecap to kneecap where they are.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So how do we make sure, given that so many of your organizations, they're not affiliated with the government in any way, it's just like really good people wanting to do good things for our veterans, how do we make sure that there's some strategic use of resources and we don't have repetitive organizations, you don't have what we call silos of excellence over here that don't talk to each other? I don't know if, Mike, you want to take that, or who wants to take that, but I'm worried that we have all this great effort, but it's not at all, it's sometimes redundant in effort.
Thank you, Senator. And you are 100% correct. There is incredible repetition within the support space and duplication of effort. I think there was a great component called out from a cohesive and collaboration perspective, a national veteran strategy to better identify the guidelines and principles, and then a national veteran data commons, like Mr. Lyons said, about integrating disparate data sets together, pulsed in with state agency data, with community-based organization data, data mapped, parsed, standardized, to basically have real-time needs and demand signals of what veterans and military families need at the national level. So a strategy and a data-informed strategy is what I
feel
recommend.
like if you gave this to a bunch of really smart 24-year-old programmers, like, okay, we have all this data, how are we going to, maybe it's you, how are we going to make this easy and accessible, and we could get at this problem? But my time is over. Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate your work, everyone.
Senator Slotkin, thank you. Thank you for your question. Senator Banks, it's not true that Senator Slotkin is the last to ask questions. It's now Senator Banks' turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've seen a lot of progress in reducing veteran unemployment. The rate right now at 3.1% is even lower than the general unemployment rate, which is really good. But I know that underemployment is still a problem, and I appreciate all the work that your organizations are doing to help match veterans' skills to great jobs to help them find meaningful careers. In Indiana, we have a very successful organization called InVets that has been recognized by the Labor Department for the important work that they do. And InVets partners with more than 500 employers in our state, and they have placed over 800 Hoosier veterans in jobs. We're very proud of the work that they do. Colonel Galui, with the veteran unemployment rate near 3%, sometimes we forget what a serious problem that rate was in the past. In your testimony, you referenced that unemployment among young veterans was 29% in 2011. Can you give us a bit of a history lesson? Like, walk us through that history, and how did we solve that? What were the good things that happened along the way to bring that rate down?
Well, thank you, Senator, for your question. And quick version of history is about 10 or 15 years ago, the conversation here would have been about getting veterans jobs. And the response from corporate America was robust. And we saw many companies committing to hiring veterans at high levels, getting them jobs. Fast forward to today, and we have, as you noted, an unemployment rate among veterans, generally speaking, that is lower than the non-veteran counterpart. That's a great news story, that veterans are getting jobs. The question now that we're asking at the Bush Institute through our policy work is that are veterans getting the right jobs? And our claim going into this policy process is that the U.S. economy can employ veterans better. And so in my testimony, I referenced a reframing of that transition question. Instead of asking service members what they want to do when they get out of service, that's only one half of the equation. The other half is what is it that the market, the labor market, wants or needs from them. So perhaps a veteran should be thinking about what it is that the veteran has in their talent set, their skills, knowledge, experiences, education that has evolved during their career. And I would say that transition begins at a session. And understanding how your skills are evolving is critically important. And that requires leadership at your unit level, such that when the time comes for you to separate and begin to thrive, you have a better way to address your own employment question and try to understand that labor supply, labor demand match.
Talk about that more. Unpack the labor supply demand mismatch and how do we solve it?
Sure. I mean, that is a large economic question, broader than just veterans. The better we can employ our human capital and our labor force as a nation, the stronger our economy will be, the stronger position we will be in. With respect to veterans in their transition, and this is a role for the Department of Defense. We've talked a little bit about, Senator King brought up, we've talked a lot about VA. Well, there is a DoD role here to some degree, and that is helping active service members understand how their skills are evolving such that the veterans themselves or the service members that become veterans can translate not just their military occupational specialty into a job, but really articulate their tangible skills and their intangible skills to employers.
I'm a big fan of what the Institute does, and I've visited with you all there, visited with you in my office. Has the Institute done any research at all on the impact of artificial intelligence on veteran skills and potential job opportunities in the future, for better or worse?
We're in that process. In fact, the gentleman sitting behind me, DeJuan Wilshire, leads our employment policy working group, which is a collaborative effort across academia, government employee, former government officials, and industry leaders that are coming together in an entrepreneurial way to better address these questions. And we will, from the Bush Institute, have policy recommendations next year.
Are we optimistic, or are we concerned about how veterans specifically will be impacted?
We're optimistic.
Good.
Senator, if I could add from the artificial intelligence perspective, public-private partnerships are a lot of the answer. For us, we work alongside Google. We've done an 11-state deep dive in policy analyses. And the beautiful thing is that by leveraging AI, we have the sort of economies of scale to find what the market trends are for the labor force and matching those with the skills that veterans and their family members bring to the table. It's through things like AI literacy, which is a big issue in society today, but veterans, based on what they did in the military, are bringing a certain level of AI literacy to the table. So in addition to Jason's, Mr. Galoui's great work at the Bush Institute, you're having this population that already is bringing the baseline to bear. If we can combine that with the data for where the trends are going, that data lives in labor, Department of Education, Department of Veterans Affairs, and Department of Defense. We bring that all together, we can match it immediately, skills-based manner, to where if you're going to school or not, you have the ability to leverage these things for a future that is already here, and that veterans are very well prepared to support strongly the American economy through.
Very good. My time has expired.
Thank you, Senator Banks. We're going to conclude this hearing in a little bit, but not quite yet. And I have a couple of questions I want to still ask, and that therefore equity requires that I ask Senator King if he has anything he would like to ask. I appreciate that. And Senator Blumenthal, I know, has a couple of questions. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. We've talked a little bit about mental health, but not enough, in my view. I recently introduced the BRAVE Act, which reauthorizes the Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Grant program to increase funding to combat veteran suicide. Just one example of the kind of program that I think is important to reach veterans. We all know that often they are reluctant to seek mental health help in the military and even when they transition out for many of the reasons associated with the condition itself, but also what they feel is the stigma of asking for help. I think it's absolutely necessary to increase funding for the VA's mental health program and to enable more veterans to seek help outside the veterans community, whether it is the mental health services offered on campuses or through employers or others. Colonel Carson, you work closely with community partners who provide mental health care under the Fox Grant program. Maybe you can speak to why it's so important to fund this program supporting the mental health of transitioning veterans.
It has been incredibly helpful already, although there are many measures yet to be to know the outcome. But the reduction in stressors already from the Fox grantees delivery is outstanding. The proposal to continue and perhaps expand the funding for the Fox grants along with performance expectations and oversight seems like a smart way forward. And I'd also say that there are other contributors from each of the organizations who are here who are doing the difference. There are many ways to prevent suicide. And the economic opportunity, being part of a community, getting an education that takes you to a career that you desire, are also contributing. But this is an important grant, and we are already seeing the performance.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Galui, I know the Bush Institute does a lot of work in this area. Maybe you could talk to that point as well.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Ranking Member Blumenthal. Check-in, as I've mentioned, is led by the Bush Institute, but powered by the Veteran Wellness Alliance. And that alliance is, half of the members of that alliance are clinical providers, the best in the nation, that can deliver high-quality mental and brain health care for post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, military sexual trauma, mild traumatic brain injury. The other half of the alliance are peer networks that engage with veterans every day, whether it's through physical activity, whether it's Student Veterans of America, as Mr. Lyon is sitting here with us, whether that is serving in disaster relief. These veterans that are together get connected to check-in, get connected to mental health care, and the two constraints on check-in from making it, helping us realize the vision, which is that check-in becomes a front door to mental and brain health care access, is clinical capacity and awareness. And we have to balance increased awareness with ensuring that we have clinical capacity funding. And all of our clinical providers have their own pursuits for fundraising, and the Bush Institute helps them along that path.
If we're creating demand for mental health services, you got to provide supply. I want to give a thanks and a shout out to the VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations, all of them, whether it's Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, Disabled American Veterans, Vietnam Veterans of America, Afghanistan and Iraq veterans. I'm sure I'm failing to cover some of them.
You're making a mistake, ranking member.
Yes. Not the first mistake I've made, but let the record reflect that the chairman has interrupted me before I could complete the full list. And I could go on. But let me just say, we've heard concerns from them and from advocates like yourself that the VA is just is not effectively carrying out their referral process to private groups by referring veterans from the VA to community partners, trusted partners like the BSOs and yourselves, the VA can ensure that veterans have access to the full range of resources and support available, at least more access, maybe not full, but the VA often fails to follow through to make sure veterans actually connect and receive that support. They're just handing veterans a business card or an email address or phone number rather than directly ensuring that veterans are physically and effectively connecting with the community partners. And I wonder if any of you would wish to comment on how the VA can improve its referral process to better track the outcomes for veterans.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I would love to comment on this. And I think organically and hopefully this could be a future iteration of the Fox grant, of where you're investing in community-based organizations to help fill gaps and to help supplement support across VA modalities, but that there also could be a digital infrastructure for these referrals to occur, to have data standards, tracking, and accountability. That's the big gap currently, is we can refer veterans into the VA will receive those referrals, but then we have no visibility on outputs or outcomes or service delivery. We have trust in the VA, but we can't see that. And in the same vein, the VA has no digital infrastructure tool to refer to community-based organizations. And so very much the solution is a business card written on a piece of paper, and we would advocate and recommend for at least piloting interoperability for bilateral interagency referrals with great vetted and validated community-based organizations out there, sir.
Senator Blumenthal.
Colonel Carson?
If I may, we have research that proves that when these things do happen in a coordinated way, with the data sharing that Mr. Hushings recommended, it is more successful outcome for the veteran, non-clinical as well as clinical outcomes, and we'd be happy to provide that research so that we can see less variability in how VA units around the country interact with community service partners. We'd like to see some standardization. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to offer my thanks before we conclude, and I know the chairman has a couple more questions, but thank you very much for spending this time with us. Much more important, thank you for all the great work that you do. I just want to make the point that the VA needs more resources, and so do your groups. Your groups deserve and need support so you can better help our veterans. The furloughs and firings and contract cancellations that we've seen at the VA began before the shutdown. The shutdown should not be blamed. It may have exacerbated problems, but we need to resolve as a nation that we're not going to inflict pain or cause unnecessary sacrifice from our veterans through the furloughs and cuts and cancellations of contracts that we've seen beginning before the shutdown. And so I know we live in a very challenging world. You are coping with those challenges in a very courageous and strong way, and I want to thank you.
Senator Blumenthal, thank you. I actually think this has been a really good hearing, so thank you for your presentation. Thanks for your time.
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You know, you're welcome, and I don't know exactly what I expected to come from this, but I am really pleased with the amount of information that I've garnered and the suggestions that at least come to my mind, and some that you've made directly about things that we could do to assist the private organizations as they care for those who serve. A couple of things that I'd highlight. Senator King did this, but I would make this same point again. And you highlighted for us the importance of the Department of Defense. And while that's not our committee's jurisdiction, so many things that we try to accomplish on behalf of veterans is determinative by whether or not the Department of Defense fulfills its mission, its task, things that they are legally required to do upon transition. And the too often failure to see that happen has a significant consequence in so many ways. And so maybe we can figure out how we work harder to get DOD to do more, while we also work to make sure the Department of Veterans Affairs is doing its job. I also was appreciative, I'm also appreciative of the highlighting of a topic that I hadn't thought about coming up in this hearing, and that's the consequences to military spouses. Again, that highlights for me an issue that we ought to pay more attention to and figure out how we solve some of those problems. We think, I suppose we stereotype too often, but I mean, a spouse is a male or a female, a man or a woman, and both can suffer the consequences of the careers of their service member and their family. And the idea of how we recruit people to find employment, I think we probably underemphasize finding ways to find employment for the accompanying spouse. So I appreciate that being highlighted. It seems to me, and I may be wrong, but I mean, in part it is that in the position that I occupy, that members of this committee occupy, we meet people who have an organization that's interested in caring for veterans and care for veterans across our states, across the country. I don't know that a week goes by, but what somebody doesn't tell me, this is my veterans organization, this is what we're doing. And I'm in a community in Kansas and somebody says, "This, you need to come see what we've just started," or tell me if that's true. Is there a proliferation of these organizations like yours on the, I suppose, particularly on the local level? And is there something significant about that happening that says that the needs of veterans is not being fulfilled? The alternative to that, I think, could be that there's just people who really care about veterans and are looking for ways to find their role in fulfilling that mission. Is there something that we should know about the seemingly growth? Is there a growth in the organizations that you deal with and that you see serve veterans that has a meaning for me?
Chairman Moran, I think, thank you for that question. And I attribute it to the entrepreneurial spirit of Americans in wanting to do right by veterans, regardless of what the federal government or state or local government are doing. At the Bush Institute, we see a wide variety of different veteran service organizations, from the large ones that are represented at this table and have been at these tables before, to neighborhood ones that are just trying to find a way to make a difference. I think of one just north of Dallas, that's a neighborhood veterans group that within their homeowners association find a way to provide resources to veterans in their community. In Essex County, Massachusetts, I know that they're just launching a fund for veterans in Essex County. So these are popping up, and I just think it's good-natured Americans doing the right thing and doing what they can.
So we should feel good about this.
I think so. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Great. You know, I think of one that even in my own family's life that was significant. And it, you know, as I understand the story, started with a realtor in Georgia who decided that World War II veterans in his community should be able to see the memorial built in their honor. And look what's transpired from an idea in one person in one community to the honor flights that we have today that are so meaningful for so many veterans. I'm interested in, maybe this is you, Ms. O'Brien. I think there's, one, I want you to start hiring our heroes in Kansas. You listed some communities, cities that this is growing, and I want to be a participant in trying to accomplish at least the mission of what hiring our heroes is doing in my home state. And I mentioned this in another hearing. I read an article I still read newspapers. I read an article in a newspaper at home about veterans from Fort Riley, actually service members from Fort Riley, soon to become veterans. The community of Wichita and the aerospace, aviation, defense businesses that are there brought those soon-to-be veterans from Fort Riley to Wichita to see what the opportunities were for employment. I think, and I know for a fact the opportunities for those veterans is significant. Those opportunities exist. but we got to figure out how to make the connection. And it's my understanding that what hiring our heroes do. And so I would welcome any suggestions of how we as members of Congress in our own states can be helpful to the process that the chamber has started. Anything I should know?
Thank you, Senator Moran, for the question. I am happy to tell you that we have a presence at Fort Riley. We have a presence at Fort Leavenworth. We come through multiple times a year. We also hosted an AI roundtable for small businesses that are in construction and manufacturing just several weeks ago. I believe Caroline, who used to be on your staff, was unbelievably helpful to us in that as well. I think what's important for anybody who wants to invest in their states, there are several models that work extremely well. The senator referenced earlier INVETS, right? INVETS travels with us. We go to over 50 installations around the globe. We're in Germany, we're in UK, we're in Hawaii, we're in Asia. And so they bring the jobs of the states with them to service members who would not know otherwise that these opportunities exist. So that's one unbelievably successful model that we have seen work at the state level. We work very hard to bring SkillBridge opportunities to states, especially for service members that want to return home to that state that they're from. And we are working diligently in Kansas to provide those opportunities. And then how we create opportunities for military spouses at the community level. You know, we can't do what we do from a national level without those community-based nonprofits that allow us to meet people where they are. And so they become unbelievably important, and we find them for us through our local chambers of commerce.
Is there a way, this goes back to lack of information that I think that Senator Slotkin was talking about, is there a way to know veterans from a state, I mean, that are, how does an organization in either hiring our heroes and what they do, how do you find the veterans to connect them with their home states? Is that possible?
It is for us because we get to them before they transition. So if they attend our events that are on installations or they opt into SkillBridge through us, we are collecting their zip code from their original home of record. That is something that they share with us. And so then we're able to discern, you know, we know about a third stay, a third return home to their states, and a third return.
Once they disperse, that opportunity's gone.
Yep. And so we can pull data and share data and make educated decisions on where we think people may go based on their original home of record. And so for us, the best piece of what we do is that we're able to connect with them before they transition. I'd also encourage people to really think about, and I'm far removed now, how do we meet young service members and military spouses where they are? And it's not even on email anymore. What are the digital platforms that they are using to gather information? And it's not the digital platform that I'm using, right? They are not on Facebook, right? They have evolved, and it's changing almost yearly. And so we have to figure out, you know, we get great results if we're texting folks. Nobody's looking at their email. There's wonderful ways in different platforms digitally that exist through social media. I am not our social media manager for good reason, but it has been an evolution that we've had to learn to embrace, or we're going to miss out on the opportunity to connect.
You've caused me to rephrase the question I was going to ask the panel, which comes a bit from Ms. Slotkin, Senator Slotkin. So what should I be putting on my website that would be able to be helpful to educating those about the opportunities? And the answer, I should change my question now. What on my social media platforms would be effective? What I should say and what mediums I should use to connect with those who are leaving military service and connecting with an organization to help meet their needs.
Yeah, we're doing a deep dive now to determine which platform we should be moving our messaging to. Based on the fact that we are sharing economic opportunity, right? LinkedIn has been a wonderful platform for us, but I think it is dependent upon the message that you're trying to share. If you are just trying to connect at scale with veterans, it's probably going to be a different platform than LinkedIn for what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add to, sorry, back over here. So
Yes,
one of the things that's beautiful about folks that enlist or commission into the armed forces is they come from states. And so what we know from our data is for non-retiring transitioning service members, 80% of them are returning home to where they came from or where their spouse is from. And so one of the things you could put on your website, or perhaps even better, is, just literally working with the young Kansans who are leaving Kansas for active duty service because they're boomerangs. They're coming right back to Kansas within 6 years. And so if you have
so you're telling me I'm late, like there's an opportunity to do something much earlier.
But you absolutely can. I mean, the big time for enlistments will tend to be towards the summer times, but not exclusively. Boot camps don't discriminate as to what time of year you're there. Harder in the warmer months, just from speaking from personal experience. But when you look at the young folks that are coming into uniform service from Kansas, the instinct is to go to the bases there and talk to folks. And that works. It's good. That's happening. What I see happening less in states across the country is actually working with those that are going into the armed forces, making sure that they're aware of what's in Kansas for them when they come back home, because we make the assumption that if they're leaving Kansas, they're never coming back. They're coming back. And when they do, you can be there to better meet them and support them.
Mr. Lyon, let me take that one step further. So what should I know about student veterans of America, and how do we connect with those who are already students in our states?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to figure out where basketball was invented for the coach over here, there are some good places in Kansas to go and do that. But when you look at transitioning service members, and I'm going to define the non-retireed population, just to segment the population enough to have your niche. That portion of the population, 74% of them are going to be in a college classroom within 18 months of taking the uniform off. IVMF's data tells us that since 2011, the most common reason for an enlistment in the armed forces is the opportunity for an education post-military service. And so one of the things that we can look at in Kansas or otherwise is that the majority of that transitioning force that is going to pursue education will do so through community college. But the majority of those that attend community college won't access their GI Bill. They'll be there for, on average, 3 semesters, preserving their GI Bill to where college is more expensive. That's their undergraduate experience and graduate experience. And so by finding a way to have better identifiers, this is, again, data, I'm a one-trick pony, but having that ability at the community college level in Kansas to have an identifier beyond, is this student using GI Bill? Are they a veteran? Or asking the question more broadly, did you ever serve in the armed forces? That way you'll know where they are at community college, and you can better help them as they look to matriculate into 4-year programs and graduate programs.
I assume there is statistical evidence that hiring a veteran has great benefit. Is that true?
Massive, sir.
Yeah. Anything you want to put statistically in front of me that we ought to brag about?
So LinkedIn's data is phenomenal in this. Veterans without any access to education, training, or anything, when they separate from the armed forces, they already possess 9 out of the 10 most desirable skills. I didn't say credentials, skills that today's employers are looking for.
Okay. We talked about Senator Blumenthal and I am about done. I go last mostly so that no one has to stay if they don't want to. We were talking about the Fox grants. I'd compliment Senator Bozeman, at least as I recall. That was a legislation that he introduced that was then included in the Scott-Hannon Act that I think this committee is very proud of. I've introduced legislation, the Hope for Heroes Act, that would reauthorize the program for 5 years, and the bill would increase the grant amounts to $1 million. This bill passed this committee unanimously in July, and so we have a legislative item that would be of interest to you, and we'd welcome your support among our colleagues. And that program is not currently active, as I think we were talking about, because of the shutdown. But it is the first time, as I understood back in the day in which we did this, that the VA became a grantor agency. In my view, they were slow to implement, but it was one of those things that I thought we were doing that had great potential. And I hope to see the continued use and fruition and benefit that comes from that. Senator Blumenthal, did I take up more time that you want to respond, or Senator King, you good? Oh, no, I shouldn't have said that. I thought they'd both say no.
You all now know what the filibuster is.
I'm supportive of the filibuster.
That's good to hear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I'm all set. Again,
All right.
my thanks to the witnesses.
Let me do one thing that may prolong the meeting. It did the last time, and it doesn't need to, but is there anyone who wants to make certain that something that needed to be said that wasn't said wants to say it? Oh, Mr. Hutchins.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one point that you were asking the panel of, what should I be informing veterans returning to my home state? What should I put on social media or my website? I think one of the things to look at, especially to Mr. Lyons' point about 80% returning back to the state that they come from or where their spouse is from, it's looking at the state agency level from a secretary and commissioner of your either Department of Veteran Affairs, Department of Veteran Services, what systems in place. That's what we very typically see in states, is people returning to their communities and very quickly connecting with those state agencies for local support. We've done an analysis of all 50 states, and over 95% have no digital infrastructure or service delivery mechanism. It's a website with signposting and a directory which becomes outdated. There is no continuum of care, no closed loop process. So looking internally at that state system of support, whether you could recommend that or provide a little nudge to get the state moving forward would be something I would recommend, sir.
That's a really good suggestion. Thank you. Mr. Galui?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, not to prolong too much longer or complicate our challenges before us, two comments. One, as we think about taking care of today's veterans and improving the transition experience for currently serving members, I just also encourage all of us to think about the 12 and 14-year-old kids who today don't know that maybe in 15 or 20 years they themselves will be veterans of whatever is ahead. So our work is doubly or triply important on that front. The second comment I'll make in terms of how do we reach veterans, specifically what social media platforms we might think about today and into the future. We have learned at the Bush Institute that our foreign adversaries are deeply embedded in some of our social media and are deliberately targeting veterans to undermine trust in the delivery of care. And so as we kind of progress through this evolution of our own transition and how we reach people in the digital space, just recognizing that there are those out there who want to undermine our own way of life that will make transition that much more difficult.
Chairman Moran?
Yes, ma'am.
I would love to share that, as members of your committee have said, technology is important, but technology is not the solution. It does enable many of the solutions that we proposed here. And I believe it was Senator Slotkin who said that she wants a one-stop shop. I'd recommend instead no wrong door, and that's what we can provide. If you picture the different networks that Mr. Hutchings has developed, and we are working with our communities of practice and intend to do even more with the Veterans Employment Collective, I'd say those might be patches of networks, but they can be a quilt that are interconnected so that there is no wrong door. And one of the things that the committee can do with us is build on what Mr. Lyons suggested, the data sharing among the agencies and sharing where possible with VSO so that we cannot be reactive, we can be proactive in our solutions and have them to be evidence-based and held accountable. We want that from our services, and we expect that from our agencies as well.
It's a very nice summary. Mr. Galui, I would say that I always look in the audience when I'm speaking to try to find someone who smiles and nods while I speak. You brought two of yours with you. I've been able to see them both. You have not. They were very supportive of your testimony and answers.
I am grateful for their support. Let the record show that. Thanks.
We're going to bring this hearing to a conclusion. A couple of magic words I need to say. Each member of the committee has 5 legislative days in which to submit statements or questions for the record. I ask any senator who would like to submit a question for the record to today's witnesses to do so in a timely manner. In other words, the members of the committee have an opportunity to ask you in writing questions that we would want you to respond to, and we want you to respond to those questions for the record received in a timely manner as well. And with that, the committee hearing is adjourned.